Hey, Dan Passarelli here, and happy Friday. It was a little happier on the close than it was a little earlier in the day. Kind of rallied into the close after being down, still less than 1%. It wasn't a big down day or anything. In fact, we're up pretty good on the week, as a matter of fact, with the S&P 500 closing, as measured anyway by the SPY ETF, at 647.24, above the 21-day moving average. We have the VIX at 1518, even though we touched new all-time highs today. The VIX is still somewhat sort of elevated, so there's a little bit of concern in the market. Why is that? Well, maybe for good reason. We had our monthly non-farm payrolls today. Economists were expecting 75,000 jobs, but there were only 22,000 jobs added. A lot less than expected. That is a sign of a weakening of the economy. But the hourly wages were expected 0.3% increase, and they were 0.3% increase. So that means that, well, the number of jobs is being added at a much slower rate. The hourly wages, they're still increasing at the same rate. So that's maybe a potential sign of what people worry about, that stagflation thing that we've talked about. But we'll get a much better idea of that next week, because next week, in the middle of the week, we have PPI and CPI. That's going to give us a very good indication of what inflation looked like in August. Another really big thing that we had this morning is the announcement of the $50 billion deal between Broadcom and OpenAI, which promotes itself as a pretty big challenge against Nvidia. That could be one of the reasons why we saw all those call spreads in Nvidia the last couple of days. Do you think somebody knew something? I don't know. But they made a lot of money on those call spreads, at least the ones that expired today. We'll see about the ones they put on yesterday that expire next week. Broadcom ended up, it's kind of hard to tell how they reacted to the news, to tell you the truth, because they had earnings after the close last night, after which they gapped really massively higher, about 30% higher, it looks like. Oh, no, 20% higher, it looks like. Oh, my gosh. But they pulled back a great deal during the day. OpenAI is not a publicly traded company, but Microsoft owns 49% of them. Microsoft supplies them with a lot of their computing power, which might be one of the reasons why Microsoft is down 2.5% today. Broadcom moving in to get that computing power directly in the hands of OpenAI, bypassing Nvidia. That's what they like to call in Silicon Valley disruption. Dun, dun, dun. That said, friends, have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Trade smart.